Hi everyone. I wanted to make a video about reading strategies. So first let me just say that there are a plethora of reading strategies, okay? I can't go over all of them in this video, but I will go over some very common ones and ones that you could easily employ for yourself or even with your children. Okay, so let's start with the first one. And the first one I'm going to recommend is activating prior knowledge, which simply means to make a conscious decision to think about what you already know about a topic before you begin reading. So, for example, let's say I'm going to read a article about summer. Well, before I just start reading, I'm going to stop and ask myself, what do I already know about summer? Well, I know that the weather is warmer. I know people like to go to the beach. I know the 4th of July happens in the summer. I know that I live in northern Illinois, so I had better enjoy my summer because it doesn't last very long. And then once I've made those connections, I can delve in and start reading. But making connections to what you read is very, very important. So here's the next strategy I'll bring up is how to make connections. Typically, there are three ways. Text to self is the first way. So as I'm reading, I will try to find ways to connect what I'm reading to myself. Have I ever experienced what I'm reading about? Or it could even be someone that I know, a friend, a family member, a coworker. Has anyone I know ever experienced what I'm reading? The second way is text to text. Have I read other reading material or watched movies or TV shows about the topic that I'm reading right now? Thirdly, is text to world. Is what I'm reading about right now occurring somewhere in the world? And how can I connect what I'm reading? So, text to self, text to text or movies or TV. And then lastly is text to the world. So, making your reading relevant and understanding it on different levels helps your reading to not be boring. Another strategy is to visualize. So this one sometimes takes practice, it depends. Um, but visualizing what you're reading, this really helps if you are reading a novel and you want to know what the characters look like and what they're thinking. Create a mental image of what is occurring in the story. Um, I am not a big fan of graphic novels. We used to call them comic books, depending on the generation you're from. And the reason being is that they give you all of the pictures and minimal words. There's nothing wrong with them if you want to read them for enjoyment, but if you're practicing reading, then they're not the best because they're telling you the story through pictures instead of through words. Developing the skill of visualization helps when you're looking at words, and it also builds your vocabulary when you read words. Um, Another very important one is to read in smaller chunks. No matter what you're reading, you can be reading your Bible, you can be preparing for a test, you can just be reading a newspaper article, whatever the case. Read in smaller chunks. Don't just read the entire article and then at the end go, I don't know, something about something. Hmm. We've all done it, myself included. If you've read something and you're done reading, you're like, I have no clue what I just read, then you read too much at a time. So read in smaller chunks. After you've read a couple sentences or a paragraph, you'll kind of know when to gauge and how to stop and where to stop. Read a little bit, stop, and then question. That's another strategy is the questioning strategy. Question yourself. What did I just read? What was it about? What just happened? Why do I care? Ask yourself those questions. If you can answer the question, then you're on top of things. Or maybe you need to continue to read to find the answers. But stop and question and again, make those connections to what you're reading. Don't just read um, an entire chapter, especially if you're working with your younger students. Same thing. Read a little bit and ask, what did the character just say? What just happened? Where? What time of the day did this occur? What color shirt did she say she was wearing? Ask those questions. That helps with the visualization as well as the connections. Another strategy is to predict. What do you think will happen next? So if you're reading a short story or fairy tales or anything like that, a graphic, I'm sorry, not graphic, but an urban fiction novel, anything like that, make predictions. How do I think this is going to end? Who do I think did it? We do it all the time when we watch movies, right? Oh, I wonder who did it. Don't go behind the door. I think something's hiding in the closet. We make predictions all the time. Do the same thing in your reading. How do you think the story will end? So some of these, as you see, kind of blend together, questioning, making predictions, or making guesses to figure out what's going to happen next, connect to things you've already seen and heard and read before. You already have a little bit of background knowledge about material, and now you're just going to continue to let that grow and learn more as you continue reading. Another strategy that's important is to reread. I know we don't always want to do things twice, right? I did it, I'm done. One time's good enough. Not always. That applies in many areas of our life, not just reading. Sometimes we have to do things more than once, and that's okay. But rereading is important. So if I read a chunk and I'm like, I still didn't get it, you'll need to reread it again. It's okay. Reread it again. And typically will make more sense to you as you're questioning and reading and visualizing and practicing different skills as you read. Okay. Um, and finally, I will say summarizing. When you're finished reading, can you repeat back what you learned or what you read? If you can repeat back what you read, what you learned, then you got it. If not, then you're going to have to go back and reread. Maybe not the whole thing, but certain passages, reread, find ways to connect to the text, um, make predictions, question, all the things that I've mentioned once already. Use those. Reading is so important in so many areas of our lives because it helps us make decisions as well, right? There's so much information going around on the news, on social media, about all these different topics that are occurring in our country and in the world. How can you determine what's true and what's not? How can you determine what the best choice for you is versus what someone else is going through? By reading. You also want to check the source. Who is saying this stuff? Like, where is this information coming from before you just start repeating it and sharing it to everybody? Where'd you get this from? It's really important. And the more you read, the better you'll be able to gauge if something sounds feasible or not. Uh, Last thing I'm going to say is to practice. Cannot get better at anything if you don't practice, right? You'll never make um, shots in the basketball hoop if you don't practice. You'll never learn how to cut the grass perfectly if you don't practice. Your cookies will always taste like drywall if you don't practice and play around with the ingredients a little bit. All right, just using some silly examples, but practice. You must practice to get better. Okay, so that being said, I will stop my video. I hope it was helpful. Feel free to rewatch it, like rereading. You can stop it, take notes, use the different strategies that I mentioned when you are reading, and I hope that is helpful for you. Stay safe and take care.